Amy Dougherty with Shimmerz Paints, and I will be sharing with you a fun little home decor piece using Shimmerz paints with a stretched burlap canvas and some odds and ends that I may have laying around my scrapbook room. I hope you enjoy. Alright, so what I have here is I have a 10 by 10 stretched burlap canvas. This is made by Canvas Corp. And on it, I glued some odds and ends numbers that I had made by Prima, and just went ahead and glued them onto my burlap. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of our Liquitex gesso. And before we get started with the actual project, I want to show you the paints that we'll actually be using in on the project. The first one's Vibes in Sea Monkey. The next one is Ruby and Spritz. Then we have Plum Pudding, also in the Spritz as well. Then we have Valentino in the colorings, really pretty red color. Then we'll also be using Hottie Pink in the blings paints. And we're also going to be using the pearls in Blue Bayou. You see that really pretty teal color. So back to what we're going to start with the project is I'm going to take some gesso and I'm just going to pour some directly onto the burlap. The burlap's going to soak a lot of it up because of the texture. So I just paint it right over the top. I'm using the numbers more to just add dimension than anything. They're not really a, I guess, embellishment at this point. It's more just building dimension. Just kind of paint it across. Oh, I must not have glued that one down. Let's just hit it with some glue real quick. Come on. There we go. Now that should stay in place. Pour a little bit more paint on there. I don't want to cover all of the burlap because I do like the, the different texture between the two. Once you have your paint or your gesso over the top, I'm going to go ahead and set it aside. And next I'm going to prep a couple other pieces. So we have these cool little resin doors created by Prima as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint them with my pearls and Blue Bayou. Make sure that I get all of the pearl from the bottom mixed into my paint. And I'm just going to take a paintbrush and paint right onto my resin pieces. I want it really heavy so that the dimension in the resin shows up really well, especially in the shutters. Plus I want the paint to be a little bit different in depth on some pieces, so it looks more like a vintage shutter, like shabby, the shabby look. Okay, I'm going to hit this with my heat gun. And I'll show you this cool thing when you use this paint, when you use the pearls on top of the resin. Come on. There we go. You can kind of see where the paint started crackling with the heat. So the longer you keep the heat gun on to your project, the more you'll get a crackle effect on these resin pieces, which is really neat. So those are my resin pieces. We'll put those aside. We're going to put them on the burlap in just a minute. What we're going to do now is go back to the burlap. It doesn't have to be completely dry. We're going to be painting over the top of it anyways. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a piece of resist canvas that I had. This is also by Prima. And I'm going to go ahead and tack it down to my canvas piece. Okay. So we're just going to kind of angle it. I know it blends into our numbers and background now, but it will pick up our paints a little bit later differently than our background will. The gesso's helping tack down the canvas as well. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and adhere my little shutters that I just painted. I'm going to add quite a bit of adhesive to these so I know that they're stable and put securely onto the background. Okay, go right next to the other one. I have this little vine. I'm going to sit right next to him, the side of the shutter. I know my flowers don't quite match each other, but that is what I'm going to show you in a bit with the paints, what you can do. When you have these little odd embellishments left over from projects, you can use your paints to blend and mix them all together so they're a cohesive project. Put our last little embellishment down. Okay. And first what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my plum pudding. It's a very nice purple magenta color. And I'm just going to start spraying. I want to add some color to this piece. I'm usually very neutral in my color schemes, but this one I wanted to add a lot of bursts of color. This is more of a plum, dark burgundy color. Oh. Now I'm going to come in with my teal. This is the Sea Monkey and Vibes. And see how when I'm painting on top of the gesso or spraying on top of the gesso, it pushes my previous colors aside. So I'm able to still work on the wet gesso finish, even with my paints, even with the gesso still wet. So the last one I have is Ruby in the Spritz, and I'm just going to go kind of around the edge of my burlap. It's a lighter color, so I want to add a little bit of color to my unfinished burlap, but I don't want to add too much. Just want to kind of blend it in with the rest of the colors. And what I'm also going to do now, back to my Valentino, I'm going to take the lid off, and I'm just going to add some little spritz or splatters of the paint. Just to give it a little pop of color. Now with my blings in Hottie Pink, I'm going to take this, shake it up really well so that all of the shine in the bottom of the jar can mix in with the rest of our paints. And what I want to do is I want to add just a little bit of extra polish, I guess you could say, to a couple of my flowers so that they stand out a little bit more than the rest of them. Not too much. I want them to still blend cohesively with the rest. Just want to add a little extra something to each of them. Okay. And on our little shutters that we had painted earlier, I want to show you how the paint pooled into our shutters, which looks really cool. I want to heat set that so that that paint stays inside the shutters. Okay. So now that we heat set the paint onto our shutters, the camera focus here. Come on, there we go. See, you have like almost this weathered paint peeled effect. We painted on top of our pearls paint with the shimmer sprays, with the spritz and the vibe sprays, gives it that weathered pooled paint effect. It gives it a really pretty finish. And same with the numbers. It did the same finish on the numbers. So this is just a fun little project that you can whip up with some of the spare embellishments you may have laying around after a project you've completed, and a fun little piece to hang on the front door or in a hallway. So thank you for joining me, and we will see you next time. Thank you.